Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Martin Pytela. He's a functional medicine expert and metabolic typing coach who has dedicated his life to restoring vitality to you and the planet. After overcoming mercury toxicity through natural healing, he has been helping others reclaim their health. Since 2011, he's coached over 12,000 clients and taught 60,000 plus students about metabolism, trauma, stress, and gut health. Through his Life Enthusiast platform, he shares holistic tools to support healing, vitality, and sustainability for people and the planet. Now, Martin and I dive into metabolic typing, and he really talks about why women over 35, over 30, at any age really, end up gaining weight and how to lose weight, but not in a manner of restricting calories, not in a manner of really looking even at macros. He's talking about how to pair food and what foods are good for you, which ones aren't. I've talked about this a little bit in the Chinese medicine realm in terms of our body types. And he talks about the thyroid body type, the adrenal body type, the pituitary body type, and how this plays into how we gain weight, how we can lose weight, but also how we can stress ourselves out just from food by not eating the right paired combinations of certain foods. Fascinating stuff here. And we even dive into the sympathetic versus parasympathetic responses that can happen related to our food pairings and our particular types of being. And it's all kind of tied into pH balance and things of that nature as well. This is a fascinating podcast. Some concepts that I've never really talked about before with anyone on the podcast. And we also are diving into kind of something much like Ayurvedic medicine, where we talk about doshas, or Chinese medicine, where we talk about the different body types and different like hot and cold and dampness and those kind of things that we talk about in Chinese medicine. And so we take it more to a digestible way to think about the body and why we may have certain issues and what may be out of balance, causing us to gain weight, lose weight, have certain health conditions, behave certain ways, have depression, anxiety, and even not be able to get the body out of fight or flight mode by just eating the wrong foods and wrong paired combinations. Fascinating. So let's introduce you to Martin Pytela. Martin Pytela, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
It's an honor.
We're going to have some fun. I already am incredibly curious, of course, from when I was pitched to have you on the podcast about the metabolic typing, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of this. And, you know, like you mentioned much on your website and what I see, you know, having been there and made the mistakes, learning as a doc, that we chase symptoms, but we're not looking at our physiology, our chemistry, what makes us and what combinations make us. So give us a little background on metabolic typing so that folks can kind of be up to speed as to like, what is this phenomenon here?
Right. Yeah, we're talking about biological individuality here. We're talking about us humans being not all made from the same mold, in the sense as you can be left-handed or right-handed, you can have curly hair or straight, you can be light-skinned or quite a lot of melanin, or differences. And this has been noticed from antiquity. Back when in India you had people talking about doshas, the vata, pitta, kapha. In China they talk about the 5 elements, and in more modern times you have people talking about the ectomorph, mesomorph, or you have people talking about blood type and how that affects the lectins, how that affects your ability to interact with foods. Some will support you, some will not. All of that is mashed together into understanding the biological individuality. And importantly, they started out by measuring the venous blood pH, the alkalinity versus acidity. So when you take in some foods, what will happen to you after? And you can see that with a glucometer. If you take a reading at the time you eat and then 30 minutes later, you will see a certain path. And some of us will spike with glucose going up high and then maybe crashing afterwards or whatever. So that's the glucose management. But there also is the other thing, and that's the pH management. And we should get into that, what that does and what that means and why that is.
But let's talk about it because I've never talked about pH balance on the podcast, and I give people pH strips to test in the office, but I've never actually brought it on the podcast. So let's
Right.
dive into it.
Yeah. And so over time, people have been measuring pH of their saliva and of their urine. And the really smart ones also measure the pH of their poop. And so I'll start from there.
Yeah.
The feces is supposed to be quite acidic because your colon should be quite acidic. So if you put a pH strip in your poop and if it's more alkaline than 6.5, which is actually acidic, you will have dysregulation in the colon, for sure. That's an alarm. In fact, there's a cascade of pH inside of your body, right? Alkaline saliva, acidic stomach, alkaline small intestine, acidic colon. And there are these internal processes that regulate. And so the next thing that you measure, if you measure urine, you will see the reflection of what your body's getting rid of. Right? That's a dumping station. If you're dumping acid things, well, you're dumping acidity. If your urine is alkaline, well, you're dumping alkaline minerals. It's only telling you what you have too much of that your body's getting rid of. People assign a lot of importance to it, but I think it's just you're measuring what your body doesn't want.
Trash.
Well, or the best homeopathic you could ever put back in, right? Depends.
Yes. Yes.
Urine therapy, all the way back to India, is a feedback loop. If you feed back into your body what it's dumping, it's going to actually self-correct.
I've read the books. I've seen the info. I haven't been able to conquer that yet.
Yeah, I have cultural issues with it. Also, of course, when I take supplements, and I do, they affect the taste and smell of things, and I get a gag reflex.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so let's not go there.
Fair enough.
Okay, and so then there's the saliva, right? And your saliva will have the pH of your inner terrain first thing in the morning, right? Like when you just wake up, the pH of your saliva will be close to the pH of what your lymphatic system is. So that's kind of important because in the human, the midline, your blood, is always maintained in a really narrow area between 7.3 and 7.4 on the pH scale, which is slightly alkaline. And I think this is where the you gotta alkalize comes from. But you don't want to over-alkalize. So let me just explain what really happens, which is this. When you drift out of balance toward acidity, you wake up early, you will be highly energized, highly motivated, but impatient. And as you drift further out toward acidity, you lose your social graces. Like you start interrupting others. And then it is easy to anger. Elbows up, get out of my way, I'll do it myself. And then just being really harsh, like speaking to people unkindly, loss of social graces. And then further on out comes rage. If it's externally expressed, it's ragey. Road rage is a perfect example of being acidic, out of control. But if you have it inward directed, then you are self-loathing and you're recriminating and you're either reliving your past with regrets or you're catastrophizing your future with expectations of disasters and doom. Beyond that, further on out, lives schizophrenia, paranoia, and crazy. So you do not really want to be too acidic, for sure. Now, on the alkaline side, if you over-alkalize, you start with emotional intelligence, like you're more pleasant, less confrontational. You rise later in the morning rather than early. And then you procrastinate. And then if you push it on out, you get despondent. And if you push it on out further, you end up in depression. Just dark. I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not dealing with the world today.
Okay.
So you can see that pushing out into either extreme has its advantages and disadvantages.
Absolutely.
So now how, right? How do I get to being dysregulated with either over acid or over alkaline?
Right.
That comes with the two models. We have two types, and this was discovered only recently. Bill Walcott came up with it in 1987, put out a book and is teaching it to people, but for I don't know what reason, it's just not been well understood, or perhaps people are too lazy to bother. Because it's so helpful. Wouldn't it be clever for me to tell you, well, if you do such and such with your food, you're going to make yourself nervous, or you will not be able to sleep? Oh, actually, let me describe it this way. People who drink alcohol go to a cocktail party, and they will notice that one type will, the more they drink, the louder they get, and the more confrontational they get. They become mean drunks. They will say awful things to one another, and if they keep going, they will even pick a fight. And those are the oxidizers. We call that the oxidizer. They are made more acidic by carbohydrates. And the other ones, they become less controlled, more, well, to alkaline. You know, the emotional intelligence, they will be more pleasant, but then they will start oversharing. And then after that, they will regret oversharing and start crying about it. And then they fall asleep.
I've seen both directions. Okay. I think a lot of
Exactly,
people
right?
have.
And those are the autonomics. Carbohydrate makes you more alkaline. So
Okay.
now we have the three macronutrients: starch or carbohydrate, fat, and protein. And the fats and proteins are on one side and the carbs are on the other, and they counterbalance one another.
Yes. Yes.
So we can ask you, what happens when you take too much carbohydrate? Do you fall apart and go to sleep? Or do you activate and become ornery or bitchy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I'm activated and sometimes can end up bitchy for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll give
And
myself
so, and that's the oxidizer model, right? And so we sort people out, like you're left-handed or right-handed, you're oxidizer or you're the autonomic. So if you are overly activated, right, overly acidic, it's not good because you're going to say things you will later regret, or you will just be unkind at times and not understand why you were so abrasive.
Mm-hmm.
And you can control that with food. So for you as an oxidizer, the antidote is fats and proteins. So for you to take a potato, which is a high carb, is okay only if you load it with fats. So for you, it's butter and sauerkraut, sour cream, and bacon bits, right? That's what your genetics call for. Do not eat carbs without fats.
Yep. I can totally see that for myself. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so when we speak to a client who is confused and wondering, why am I so this or that? Once we map it, we can easily offer guidance.
Okay. Okay. Now, something, of course, you intrigued me with when before we hit record was the gaining weight and losing weight. Most women over 35, if not,
Okay.
over 8 years old, have,
Mhm.
obsessed over all of this and
Right.
wondered,
Yeah.
how does this work? And so I'm
Yes.
seeing a pattern here.
So part of the metabolic typing test that we offer is getting answers to two things. One is the answer to the pH balance, as in how will I become depressed or how will I become unpleasantly angry. The other one is how do I gain weight or lose weight? And we call that the endocrine dominance. And for that we have four for women, but they lose the fourth one after menopause anyway.
Interesting.
So they are. We call it thyroid, adrenal, pituitary. And in women, we also have a gonadal or ovarian. All men are simple, they are all testosterone drives. In women, only some have the overpowering effect of the high estrogen, which we should mention. So that is triggered by spicy food, like chilies and hot sauce and that sort of thing. And there are some women who really love hot food. And when they overdo it, it stimulates the ovaries so that more estrogen is pushed, especially during the formative years, puberty. And so you end up with accentuated feminine characteristics. So you'll have wider hips and you'll have the free version of the Kardashian plastic surgery. You'll get it for free. Just feed your girl a lot of hot food when she's just growing up.
Okay.
Anyway, so you'll end up with, say, size 2 from waist up and size 6 from the waist down.
I can see some patterns in just in cultures that feed a lot of spicy foods, the Latino population in particular.
Yeah,
Okay.
the hot African, the hot Caribbean, the hot
Yes.
whatever. Yep, those are them.
Okay.
And so they will end up with these wider hips. The secondary feminine characteristics are accentuated.
Okay. Okay. So we got the hot folks. What about us folks that don't like the spicy stuff? Like me, I'm very boring.
What they are. Okay, so let's talk about the other ones. So
Yeah.
we have the pituitary.
Yeah.
Their temptation foods are usually creamy, and they tend to grow into a body type that's kind of straight. However, the fat distribution is even, and in an overweight or yeah, and you will see the Pillsbury Doughboy or the Cabbage Patch Doll, where the ankle is thicker and the fat distribution is like on the leg all the way up, and it's all over everywhere. Anyway, Cabbage Patch Doll. If you when you see one, you say, "Oh yeah, that's the pituitary type."
Okay.
Anyway, their temptation foods are creamy, like whipping cream and yogurt and that sort of thing.
Lots of
But
dairy.
their health food are actually the ancestral, the organ meats, the high purine. So liver, heart, tongue, red meat. That's their health food.
Okay.
So that's the pituitary. And they're the smartest of the folks. Their head tends to be larger to the proportion of the to the body than you would expect. And they usually are the intellectuals.
Right.
So that's one. The other one being adrenal type. They dominant gland is the adrenals. They tend to be very resilient. Their temptation foods will be savory. They will gain weight with fats and lose weight on salads and fruit. And they tend to be the stocky farmer type or the weightlifter or the gymnast. The thing that comes to mind is like Simone Biles, if you remember what she looked like. Shorter, easily building muscle mass, very explosive strength, huge endurance.
Mm-hmm.
In
Okay.
men, you will see them as linebackers on the football team.
Okay.
They tend to be built like a brick house,
Yeah.
stocky, strong, and huge endurance. Like you can give them a pick and a shovel and say, dig me a trench. They'll come back in 10 hours saying, I'm done. And they will not stop, right? Like they can just go.
Okay.
Oh, and their meal preferences. So I should say in the pituitary, the people like to eat large breakfasts and very scant. In the adrenal types, those people usually enjoy zero breakfast and main meal as a dinner.
Hmm.
They do best that way. So a cup of coffee for breakfast, a little bit of something for lunch, and a large dinner. And they will tell you, oh, I love steak and stuff. But that's what's weight on them if they overdo it, right? So the typical football player, if he continues eating his dinners that he used when he was a young guy working out and putting out 4,000 calories, he'll just blow out into an oversized. But they put weight on here, shoulders, chest, they're massive. Their limbs are thick. And then the last one, the thyroid dominant, that's probably the one that's the least well served by the American nutritional advice because they are tempted by starchy foods. They are the ones looking for cookies after dinner. And their weight gain food is starch, and weight loss food is protein, or fat, actually, I should say. Fat more than protein. And so the keto diet is the slim diet for the thyroid type, where you dial back the carbohydrates as hard as you can.
Hmm.
But that, for the thyroid type, is the temptation food. So they crave it the most. And they will be all the Victoria's Secret models are the thyroid types. Slender, longer limbs, wider hips rather than not. That's the folks. They would be on the volleyball team, the basketball team, the sprinters, the quarterbacks. Those are all the thyroid types. They are quick, but with limited endurance. So they need to take breaks between things. They can do a sprint, but the pituitary are the long distance runners. Adrenals are the weightlifters, the hard workers, the bulls of the world.
I can put this all together for a lot of different people. I'm thinking through different people. I'm thinking through myself, of course. I think I'm more of an adrenal type since the
Yeah.
weightlifting.
Yeah, you look, I mean, the parts of you that I see, I would expect that you would be somewhat thyroid, but mostly adrenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear you say you can overlap a little bit between the
Oh, yeah,
two.
yeah. Yeah, so if
Okay.
you could visualize a space,
Mm-hmm.
that so you have the adrenal, thyroid, pituitary, whatever, and then you have your circle that's going to be somewhere within that space. So
Okay.
you'll have a preference. Like you look at me, this is a thyroid model. My wrist is not that thick, other hand around it. My ankles are not that strong.
All right. So yeah, I could see how you're.
Yeah, you're somewhat stronger built than I am, right? Like you have that Eastern European farmer stock in you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
It's
Well, anyway, so that's the dominances. And so if you find a thyroid person who says I'm overweight, they will gain weight on the belly. It starts right around the belly button, and they will start putting on a fat pad until they have a beer gut.
yeah. Uh, and we've all seen it. And definitely at midlife, this is what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's the thyroid type most of all.
Okay. Okay.
And so
This
their, for example, their slimming herb is going to be red raspberry leaf. So red raspberry leaf tea is going to be the hormonal correction that will help them gain less around that. But most of all, they need to control their urge to eat carb.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's that, and I can see, just to kind of bring it for full circle for folks who are listening, like this is why, keto doesn't work for everybody, carnivore doesn't work for everybody, all these different things don't work.
Yep.
'Cause we're not putting the customization here
Yes,
on it
exactly that.
as it stands. And the other interesting thing you mentioned, which I think a lot of people are stuck in fight or flight mode at this stage of life, and how this ties in.
Yeah, yeah, this is super important because it's the internal pH that regulates the autonomic nervous system. There are two branches to it, the fight or flight, sympathetic, or rest, repair, digest, the parasympathetic. And the sympathetic is on the acidic side and the parasympathetic is on the alkaline side. So when you alkalize, you're shutting down your nervousness, you're lowering your blood pressure, you're improving your ability to sleep, all of that. Like you cannot go to sleep stuck in a sympathetic. You'll be sitting there with eyes this wide, regardless of how tired you are. So you need to shift your pH out of acidic to alkaline in order to shift out into the parasympathetic in order so you can actually go to sleep.
Makes
So
sense.
if you're the oxidizer, that requires fats. If you're the autonomic, that requires starches. That's why a nightcap, a sherry after dinner, works for autonomics to put them to sleep. If you're an oxidizer and do it, you say, let's go to town.
You're on fire, you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's party.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so, a lot of people will be reaching for all the different herbal supplements out there to try to help sleep. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's more looking at pH foods
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, this is the important thing to understand what's important, right? The spiritual over emotional, over mental, over air, over water, and now finally level 6 we're at macronutrients, the calories. It all comes in order. And so the macronutrients, you need to manage those. Because if you mismanage your macronutrients, that's the carb, fat, protein, if you mismanage that, no matter how you fiddle with the micronutrients, you're not going to get it right.
100% sense. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people that we just weren't able to get any, they've tried 4,000 sleep supplements come in, and then we're like, well, why don't we work on
Yeah.
energetics? Now, spiritual, going back to the higher level and coming all the way down, I'm guessing there are connections here as well
Mhm.
in the metabolic typing.
I suppose, yes. Well, your emotions will be affected by your inner pH. If you're overly acidic, no amount of meditation is going to bring you back into centeredness.
This is
You're
what
just going to be sitting there stewing and hating the fact that you just can't calm down.
I've heard that a couple times. Now, what's fascinating about this, because a lot of people will tell me, Martin, that they're like, I've done all the things to try to work on my nervous system. I've meditated,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
done sound baths, but we're missing some components here.
You may be missing the absolute basics, which is your culture, which is the people who taught you to cook or eat, may have it incorrect based on what you should be doing.
It makes sense. I mean, most Americans have 12 meals, 14 if they're lucky that they rotate through.
What you mean, like the ham cheese sandwich and peanut butter and jelly and those kind of things?
Taco Tuesday, Pizza
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things
Well,
where a lot of people struggle.
yeah, so even within that, even if you go out to a fast food restaurant, you still can control the ratios of starch or carbohydrate, fat, and protein.
Mm-hmm.
You can still figure that out. Now, what's really important is that raw food is loaded with enzymes and is supporting your health. So, yes, I would like you to be eating an organic salad rather than some crappy food, but raw, uncooked vegetable stuff is awesome because it helps you stay healthy, supplies you with fiber and pigments and whatever else, right? All important. But that is a zero on the fat versus carb.
Yeah.
What are you going to do next? Are you going to put rice with it or a piece of chicken?
Yeah.
And are you going to try and go lean when you're supposed to go fat? One of the stupidest things that they have invented was low fat. It absolutely kills the thyroid dominant. It just does terrible disservice to them.
Yeah.
That's why the keto diet craze is so popular, right? Because you discover keto diet and say, oh my gosh, it's so easy. Okay, so let me just explain. So some of us are lucky and have an endocrine dominance that's a good match to the metabolic dominance. Some not so much, right? So if I'm an oxidizer, I'm made more peaceful with fats. If I'm thyroid dominant, now I'm going to be peaceful skinny. But if I'm the autonomic dominant, I'm going to be now nervous skinny. So I have to walk a much narrower path between just enough starches to keep me calm, but not so many that I would get fat from.
Which comes down to people kind of sleuthing that out and going, okay, Martin, how do we sleuth this out? Because most people are going to think it's based on macros and your actual grams of these things. But I'm guessing you're going to tell me it's based on the pairing of.
Yeah, it's the ratios. The total quantity is less important than it is the combination, the ratios, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do a hypothetical, especially since the thyroid type of personality or type is not the personality, but the thyroid type is underserved. Let's do a little case study on someone. Let's say that we've got somebody who, maybe they were a model or a volleyball player when they were younger. Now they've had some kids, the weight's coming on the belly. Where do they start in terms of looking at diet and how do they start working on it?
Look at me. I'll give you me as a study, right?
Okay.
I was 30 something, 32, 4 or 5, and I decided to go the healthiest route. I went vegetarian.
Okay.
My cholesterol went through the roof and I was putting on weight like crazy because I was overeating starches and undereating fats and proteins. So I had horrible cholesterol levels and I was putting on weight. So I had to admit that I have to give up this dream of being a yoga vegetarian, and I was going to have to be eating fats. And so my salad now had a whole ounce of olive oil on it and a piece of fish or a piece of chicken with it, which served me just fine. And so the weight came off, but only then, only when I admitted that the addiction to starchy foods is wrong. That's how it worked.
Okay.
And it didn't take long. Like as soon as I switched, it came off within, say, 3-4 months.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking about, because I read up on you a little bit on your history with the mercury poisoning and things of that nature. A lot of people right now are convinced they have to detox their bodies and kill all the microbiome imbalances and clear all the heavy metals and et cetera, before they can achieve other balance in the body.
Yeah, this is a difficult point for sure, because of course you're trying to fix the bicycle while you're riding it in that sense. And so the toxicity is a terrible thing. The industrial age toxins are disrupting all function, especially mercury is awful because it destroys your connective tissue. So you'll have back pain and migraine and plantar fasciitis or carpal tunnel syndrome or all kinds of physical dysregulations or health problems, most of which are caused by the presence of mercury. It will also give you the neurological trouble, like they'll call it MS, multiple sclerosis, that's highly associated with mercury in the body. So you get that out and the symptoms go away. Go figure.
So definitely something that I hear often, kind of tied into this, like you're mentioning, get into the personalized detox, get into the personalized nutrition here, and then build layers. So I'd love to hear kind of how you're consulting folks. Like, how does it work on your end?
Yeah, you said what comes before what. I say, well, there are these 4 things: toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. Trauma being the emotional dysregulation that we store in our soft tissues, the traumatic events. And they could be minor, but when you stack a pile of them on, it will still cause you trouble. And stagnation, that's from being sedentary and not physically engaged enough, not enough stress on your body. By that, I mean positive exercise type of stress. And the malnutrition, that's eating the industrial food-like objects that this modern food industry is presenting us with. There are 5 things that you should never eat: refined sugar, refined flour, refined plant seed oils, refined salt or minerals, and pasteurized dairy. Those are no good for anyone. And yet, those are the ones that were presented because when you treat food that way, you end up with longer shelf life, which means that it's going to be cheaper. So that incentivizes the manufacturer to do it that way because they will have to throw away less, and incentivizes the consumer to buy it that way because it's cheaper. But it's the wrong thing. It malnourishes you. So that's the malnutrition. And the last one is the toxicity, which is, again, industrial age. That's the heavy metals, that's the plastics like the phthalates and the PFOAs and BPAs and all of that stuff that comes with plastic utensils, plastic containers, hot food, hot drink in plastic stuff. All of that is, oh yeah, and the fragrances, the glades and all of that volatile organic stuff that just dysregulates. They are endocrine disruptors like you wouldn't believe. So all that, right? So I have these 4 things that I have just named. And so when you say to me, well, which one is the important one? My query to you is, which is the most important wheel on your car?
All of them.
That's the point. You cannot move it with one of them missing. You cannot move it with one of them flat, and so on, right? Like you need to maintain it well enough that all 4 of these things are functioning. And so when you say, well, what do I do first? Well, you run in circles or a spiral, fixing all of it all the time. You can always upgrade any one of them. You detoxify, you get better food, you exercise more, move more, and you do emotional healing by clearing the stuff that you picked up along the way.
The stuff that you pick up along the way is a very fascinating subject, especially for a lot of people, because I do believe that's heavily involved in why we hold on to certain things, why, and definitely the food choices and weight gain for a lot of people is related to that trauma and
Yeah,
things we pick up. What kind of things are you working with, folks, in terms of your protocols for working on trauma?
right. Yeah, so there are these 2 types of memories, right? There are the memories that are conscious that you control, and then there are the programs that are stored not in the surface of your brain folds, they're actually stored on the inside, and they're also stored in the soft tissues of your body. The water of your fascia and of your lymph remembers things. That's the nature's memory device. So talk therapy doesn't help you because when you do talk therapy, you talk about something, and by doing that, you're reliving the experience. So let's just say that you were assaulted and you're now traumatized and you're now afraid to go out. Well, if you talk to me about it, you're just going to re traumatize yourself by remembering the whole thing. That's not helpful. So we need to find some way to reach your unconscious, the part of you that's storing the fear without dealing with the memory of it. And there are methods like EFT, emotion freedom technique, or it's also known as tapping, or body talk, quantum healing, neurolinguistic programming, even hypnosis and other related things, and body work of many sorts, kinesiology, those sort of things. Those are the ones that work out the stored emotional concepts. They don't have a picture content to it. They just have the emotion content to it. And that can be released.
Makes sense. How do you approach the lymphatic system as it connects into parasympathetic sympathetic?
Yeah, that's the other underappreciated world, right?
Yes.
So one, it only moves when you move. There's no vascular driver in the lymphatic system. It only moves when you move. So up-down movements, there are these channels. They start at the feet and run through the lymphatic nodes, lymph nodes, And the lymph nodes are always on the inside of joints. So, for example, the inside of my elbow up here, there's one. Inside of my armpit, there's one. Inside of my groin, it's hard to show here on the podcast. The back of your knee, the top of your ankle, and just below your belly button, those are the places where the lymph gathers. And so when you move, I'm just showing it to you here, I'm pumping this thing by compressing, decompressing. And so we can volitionally pump it, right? So the pumping would be something, let's just demonstrate it up here. So this here, up here, just above your clavicle, is the most important point of your lymphatic system, because the part that's pumping from below up ends up here. This is where the lymphatic system connects with the cardiovascular system. Anyway, so the pumping, it's like dancing waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And this is the pumping. And you don't punch it. You just press, release, press, release, press, release. So that's what a skilled lymphatic massage will do. The other things that you want to do is you want to walk, run, jump, bounce. You also want to possibly do skin brushing, dry skin brushing. That'll move things along.
Is there any connection with the lymphatic system and the different types of metabolic types, like between thyroid or adrenal or whatnot?
Yeah.
Is there anyone that's more bogged down?
I think the pituitary have the biggest issues with it. They tend to swell. They tend to be puffy. That's as much as I know about it.
That's okay. It's just something that I'm very fascinated with lymphatic because it's one of the things that...
Yeah, it's so important, right? Like if you allow it to fester, you will notice that you get smelly, smelly feet, smelly groin, smelly armpits. That's a sign of sluggishness and decay, right? Like you're like a swamp. You're putrefying.
Wow. But completely real, and I think a lot of people, we think that we're supposed to stink in certain areas, but the less stinky we may be means the better lymph movement is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, I'm imagining that your intake for clients is quite extensive in terms of asking questions.
Actually, it's not that horrendous. We present this thing called the metabolic typing test, which really is a quiz. It's about 120 multiple choice questions done online, where we'll ask you things like, when I eat high protein breakfast, I feel, or my ears are more pink than the rest of my face, or my shoulders are narrow relative to my hips, stuff like that. So some of it is the physiology, and some of it is the response to what you eat and when you eat it.
Okay. So, I'm fascinating. Just even 120 questions. That's a lot more than you'll get in an average doctor's office. Let's put it that way, for sure. And in terms of longevity, this is a hot topic. A lot of folks are rethinking aging, longevity. There's this concept of all the fancy biohacking tools and whatnot. But it seems, and this is my opinion, I'm curious on yours, it seems that we've maybe gone a little bit beyond the basics. We've forgotten the basics and went to the fancy stuff, like the IV therapies and all those things.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess what you want to compare is the time versus the function, right? Like we talk about how long can I keep good health versus time, right? Some people will go at a decent level and then finally at the end they hit the wall and let me die at 96 in my snowboarding accident.
Absolutely.
I'll be fine with that.
Yes.
As opposed to my last 20 years were spent in a wheelchair looking at a TV screen that I couldn't comprehend while drooling.
Yeah, no one wants that.
Nobody does. And yet, so that's the metabolic decline, right? Like if we dysregulate at the metabolic level, we will toxify, malnourish, stagnate, and traumatize ourselves into this subsistence rather than we exist, but we don't thrive at that level, right? So you're asking, how do I not do that? How do I maintain or attain the longest possible? And I would say it's the opposite, right? Detoxify, nourish well, don't stagnate, exercise, stress your body in a healthy way, and get rid of your emotional garbage.
Well said. Well said. All the things that I definitely want for folks, myself included, to work with over time. And it sounds like you're definitely doing that over at Life Enthusiast.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then there are, of course, there's this wonderful story, the professor in front of a class with a large jar, filling the jar with golf balls and asking the students, is this jar full? And they say, well, it looks full. He hauls out a bunch of marbles and shakes a whole bunch of marbles into that jar and says, well, okay, is this full? Well, now he pulls a whole bunch of BBs, pea-sized stuff, and pours it in that. And it still finds space among the golf balls and the marbles because there still is some space. And then finally some sand, and finally 2 cups of coffee. And what's the wisdom here? You have to start with the golf ball. And that's what we talk about here when we say macronutrients. What are the most important? Yeah, you don't need to major in minors, getting yourself into the weeds, wondering whether you should take NAD or NMN or this or that or whatever. Should I take more zinc or more copper? Yeah, they're not unimportant, but if you screw up the macronutrients, the micronutrients will not even get you anywhere.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And on that same lines, it seems that, when we're looking at reversal of symptoms, reversal of, degradation of health and putting ourselves back into balance, it's also key to go back to basics again and
Yes.
start there.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Understand what's off and then fix it. Sure. I mean, with your naturopathic education and understanding and all of that, right? Like there are these basics of life versus death. Chemicals are dead foods, right? Eat something that's been processed by a plant. Think of it. Rocks need to be treated by the microbes that are taking them apart so that the plant takes it from the mineral form into the phosphate form. That's how it ends up in a plant. That's how you end up eating it and being able to actually use it because it needs to be chelated before you can actually utilize it. So eating rocks as a human is not very effective because you need to have the microbes that are going to do the work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've got really far out of what we've taken health. Let's put it this way. We've taken health and the naturopathic medicine, like curriculum and turned it into the modern medicine. And unfortunately, a lot of myself included, I'll call myself out too. And we tried to fit into the Western model and ended up treating a lot of symptoms and not going back and going, how do we work on the basics? And this is where, of course, I'm coming back to, a lot of folks are coming back to this, but I
Yeah.
really want to, this is why I wanted to have you on, because of the highlight of where we've got to look at the step to the
Yeah.
next
Yeah,
foundation.
you just said the magical words, which is this difference between cause and symptom, between strategic and opportunistic, which is this. The pharmaceutical industry, which is dominant in our culture because they own the media, they own the internet, they own the Senate, they own the government, they control the whole thing. And their way of thinking is find a symptom and apply a treatment to the symptom. In our world, we talk about biological individuality, treating the person, not the illness. I don't care about your labs. Care about your symptoms. Yet the labs are not irrelevant. They are important because they show us where you're out of balance. But I don't want to treat your numbers. I want to treat you and help you have better health. And so what we seek is the treatment of the root cause, asking why is that? My headache is never caused by a deficiency in Excedrin.
This is true. This is true.
So expand that into every possible thing. Your blood pressure issue is not a deficiency in a beta channel blocker or whatever the prescription is that you think you need.
Yeah. And I would venture to say that we're also, and this is what happens in my industry, is that your blood pressure issue isn't a deficiency of hawthorn berry, or Indian snake
Very
oil,
well put. Yeah.
because we also have that kind of thing going on. And I don't, this is my opinion. I'm curious on yours. Right now, we're very heavy in hormone replacement therapy, and it seems to be the panacea for every single thing. And
Sure.
while I do recommend it in certain cases, I find that sometimes it's not the end all be all. It's not magic. It's icing on the cake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so the two major ones, or the three major ones for women, right? As the perimenopause arrives, the progesterone level starts falling, and you start losing your cool, and you're less stable, and your sleep is less. easy to come by, and so on, right? So yeah, you need to figure out how to naturally support all of that. Most of it is liver function, gut function, whatever else. When you support that, you will see that the hormonal levels stabilize and improve.
And do you figure, because this is kind of where I see what you're doing with the metabolic typing, a lot of us compensate, especially in perimenopause, for the symptoms of the progesterone dropping. We change our
Mhm.
diet. Some people compensate by changing their diet because they're gaining weight, but sometimes I feel it's a coping mechanism where a lot of people will go towards more fat or more carb or more savory, like food
Mhm,
soothing,
mhm.
and that creates more of a disease in the body too.
Yeah, the self-amplifying loop, right?
Hmm.
And if you understand what you're doing, then you have more control over it.
And this is why we're here, to help kind of
Yeah,
plant the seed in folks, because this
yeah,
this is exactly what I was hoping that we would talk about today, is really get that idea out there of, like you mentioned, the different foods, the different
yeah, yeah.
types of folks, and then how that impacts.
Right. And of course, I mean, we do have tools, right? Like, for example, speak of stress, right? Stress is what happens out there, your sensory inputs, and your brain interprets it and you react. And if you react, you fire off your adrenals and they release cortisol, and cortisol will flood or release glucose out of storage. And if you're sedentary and just sitting there stewing with your stress spinning, the only solution your body has is to send in insulin and convert it into belly fat.
Absolutely.
So that's the natural consequence. So you have now tools. Do you work it off by physical activity? Or do you take a herbal supplement, as we have? We have something called cortisol ease, which will naturally diminish the circulating cortisol, which will drop the glucose level, which will drop the requirement for the insulin, which will naturally prevent this stress induced belly fat.
There's patterns
Yeah,
everywhere. We
yeah,
just
yeah.
have to open up and see them. And I'm a fan of having people take notes on themselves. Do you recommend folks to take notes and kind of chart
Yeah,
like what's going on?
yeah. Yeah, with the metabolic typing test, you get something called the DCR, Daily Check Record, which has 3 slots on it: breakfast, lunch, dinner. And in it, you will have questions such as: after I ate, I was hungry within an hour, or I was stable, I was satiated, I was not, I was nervous, or I was calm, I was sad, I was joyful, whatever. A whole bunch of questions. Not long. It takes you about a minute to tick the 10 boxes. And with that, you will be able to essentially diarize of: I ate this, like a burger, fries, and a tiny salad, or I had a huge stir fry with chicken and rice, or whatever it is that you did, and the response, how your body. And you come back to me with like 14 of these sheets, and we just blitz through it. And before you know it, you have very clear pattern about what will work and what will not.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff for folks. Gosh, Martin, so many fascinating things here, especially, looking at the metabolic typing. And I think folks are going to be fascinated to look into that further. So let's tell them a little bit more about Life Enthusiast, how they can take their quiz, get to know you, get to know more,
Right. Yeah.
how you can help.
Well, the website is life-enthusiast.com. You'll find links to all of it. There are lots of podcasts with information explaining this in even greater detail. There is the metabolic typing test itself. Currently, we charge $97 for it. It will probably take you an hour or so to do, and then it will take you about an hour with me to understand how to implement all of that in your life. We also do a guided tour for people who like to do it in a group. Yep. Full retrain, re-educate. It's sort of like going to a exercise class as opposed to doing it alone.
Makes sense.
So that's there. And plus, of course, we have a lot of supplementation. Life Enthusiast as such is about a 35-year-old business, 25 of them online. And what we do is find and source products that are still made by companies owned by the inventors. There's something really weird that happens is when a person creates a product that they're passionate about, they usually invest themselves into the result, as in the physical benefit, the outcome. Once that business gets bought by some investment company, they start managing the business for the bottom line as opposed to the impact on the customer. And there's there's just subtle, maybe not so subtle drift toward mediocre results. So we still hunt down products that are made by these small businesses where you will actually get real decent.
It's huge. It's huge because if anyone wants to do the research on who owns some of the top supplement companies, you're going to find it's big pharma that's behind a lot of it.
Actually, it's a big tobacco and big
that's
food. You see, what happened is Philip Morris, when they saw the writing on the wall, they went out and bought Kraft and Heinz. I'm just making it up. I don't know the exact names, but that's what happened, is the tobacco, when they realized that they could addict people to food, they went and bought food, and then they made food addictive. And now the result is this incredible disaster: obesity and heart disease and cancer, all of that. Those are all the logical outcomes of addicting people to the wrong stuff.
So sad. So sad. We're waking up. One podcast at a time. We will help folks to wake up here, just slowly but surely. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation today, Martin. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing all about Life Enthusiast, but also about the metabolic typing. I think folks are really going to like this one and really find a way to kind of demystify this thing that is our body and what it does and why it does what it does.
I so appreciate you too. Such a bright light in the world of mostly hopeless, zero benefits. You deliver so much. All you have to do is just go on your website and read the testimonials, right? We didn't hit on that. I'll just throw in just a little tidbit. The thyroid type, especially fast oxidizer, needs to have about 10, if not 20 times more iodine in circulation in order to function well. And a deficiency of iodine is causing deficiency in the mucosal barriers, which will cause you problem implanting your egg in your tubes. And it will also diminish your chance of carrying your pregnancy to term. So if you have the thyroid type on not enough iodine, eating wheat, you have a disaster waiting to happen. You will lose 7 out of 10 pregnancies trying to live a life like that without understanding, right? Just a little thing like that. Know thyself.
That is so huge. That is so huge. And I see this often with women. So such an important thing. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure you have other little tidbits too like this, and we'll have to send folks over to your website and take the quiz and get in connection with you so they can learn more. Such good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.